Welcome aboard the USS Aeronome. To become a member of our crew, please visit perfectorganism.com/support. As a patron of Perfect Organism, you'll receive exclusive perks and early access to content. Incoming audio transmission received. Please proceed to Subdeck 3 to begin playback. Thank you, and welcome aboard.
Doc, I think we ought to discuss the bonus situation.
Right.
Brett and I, we think we deserve full shares, right, baby?
You see, Mr. Park and I feel that the bonus situation is good.
Move! Get out of there!
Don't you move! Dad! Move, Dad! Move, Dad! Get out!
In this special episode of Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, I am pleased to be interviewing director Ben Howdeshell, the writer and filmmaker behind Alien Harvest, which premieres today via IGN and YouTube. Thank you, Mr. Ben Howdeshell, for being on the show today. We are talking about your short film, Alien Harvest, which I was able to see almost 2 weeks ago at the Fox lot in Hollywood or Los Angeles. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to kind of start with at the beginning. When they made the announcement that they were having a contest, you have to submit your idea and all of what was going on. Where were you? What was going on?
I was prepping for, I was in Los Angeles, and what I was doing work-wise was I was prepping for this music video called With or Without that starred Mila Jovovich. And so we were just deep in it, like writing and like coordinating with the label in France and finding a location, because we were like, are we going to shoot it in Germany? We're going to shoot it in LA. So it was just a lot of that. And I had heard about this thing, and I was like, whoa, this is great. And so there's two writers that I work with, a guy named Craig, who I'm partners with at a company, and then Mike, we have Mike. Well, actually, both Craig and I and Mike and I have feature scripts we're working on. But I asked each of them, I was like, so what do you guys think? Like, these are my ideas. Like, where should we go? And so essentially we put together two ideas and, submitted them both. And both of them were pretty big. But they chose the one that Alien Harvest. And Alien Harvest came out of just a nugget of an idea, which was like have it be about a female synthetic who's stranded on this ship. And it kind of morphed into what you saw through notes and through ideas and through what works and what doesn't.
So you submit your ideas, they choose one. Of course, I know it took them a few days. I was kind of following along with the process. It took them, I think, a week, wasn't it? No, it was 3 days after you submit. They made a decision. So when you found out that you were chosen, like, was it an overwhelming thing, or were you just kind of already in the mindset like, okay, if they choose us, like, we're already working, we already kind of know what we're going to do? Or was this going to be, were you totally blind with this? I mean, obviously you come from a film background, we can get into that in a little bit, but like what's going through your head at the time?
I was so busy on this other project that I was just like, all right, this is awesome, and I love going from one thing to the next. Yeah. And I love having a lot on my plate because there's a lot. It lets you. It's great to be creative in multiple projects. So the summer was great. It was very busy, very stressful, but very creative because we were like creating both, and they both just happened to be horror. Granted, the thing with Mila was a home invasion horror, and then this was sci-fi horror. But they were both like right in the same wheelhouse, and we were working on like what's really scary. How do we scare people and setting up very scary situations. And so it was honestly great. And Tongle was fantastic. Like our guy that we worked with almost all the way through the process was a guy named Quaid. And, he was very straightforward, very clear cut. He put everything in writing. He was always available to talk. You know, I mean, I got to say super patient, because I don't know what the other filmmakers are like as far as, you know, people who are hands-on, but I definitely called and emailed him a lot.
After you find out that you've essentially won, you're going to be one of the filmmakers. What's the next step? Does Tongo or Fox reach out to you? Like, so that was last summer. You find out you win. You're going to be one of the filmmakers. What happens after that?
Well, so it was a two-step process. First there was they chose 18 people. And they gave us all a little money to put together a proper pitch. And that pitch included a full script, a lookbook, and a mood book, mood boards, and then a pitch video. And so it was, I think, we had to do it in about 4 days just because of our schedules. And so it was very, it was, you know, Craig and I worked on the script a lot. Craig is a very good writer. He went to Cornell. He's, you know, I mean, I've read lots of his scripts, and I'm just, I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of his work. And it just comes out really nicely. And a lot of our stuff that Craig and I work on together comes out very action oriented. So we kept getting notes that were like, well, Alien is more horror tension. And so at one point we just went through the script. I shouldn't say this. We just went through the script and changed the adjectives so that it felt more horror tension versus more action and tension, I guess. And then I think the hardest part of the pitch process was the pitch video, because I had to look right at a camera and talk. And I enjoy public speaking, but if I know something can be edited or if I know something can be turned off, I tend to panic. I don't know. It was a very embarrassing video. I'm sure because I mean, I thought I was just going to talk and pitch the idea. And then I realized very quickly that I couldn't just do that. So I wrote it all out. Craig was directing me. So I wrote it all out on a computer. I put the computer monitor my laptop monitor right under the camera. And then I just read it. But the problem was the way that we had the frame lined up, my hand was on a mouse and I was scrolling the whole time. So I showed it to my wife and she's like, what the hell are you doing with your hand? I was like, I'm running the teleprompter. And she's like, you got to fix that. And so we zoomed in, cut my hand out there so that I was just, but it was I'm very specifically a behind camera person. I'm not in front of camera person. Yeah. But it was fine because I just essentially made a radio edit of it. So it sounded good. So the audio sounded good. And then I put, every time there was a picture cut, I put video of previous projects that I've done, I used a lot of stuff from Project Sarah, which was a short film that I did that IGN and Fox bought. They turned it into a web series. So I had a ton of like female driven action horror zombie stuff to pull from, that I could just, that was all my stuff. Cause obviously what you wanted to do for these pitches is show your stuff and not show someone else's stuff. And so once I did that, I think we had to wait a week and then we got it. It happened relatively quickly.
Wow, that's great. For the record, you work in the business, and I know you've worked, of course, behind the scenes doing many projects. I know you also worked on Resident Evil, one of the last Resident Evils. It was the last one, correct?
No, so one of my best friends cut the last one.
Okay.
I worked on Resident Evil 3 and 4, which was Resident Evil Apocalypse, and then oh my God, I can't remember what 4 was called. But 4 was the first one shot in 3D.
Okay.
So that was actually shot with the Cameron Pace cameras. And then we were the first actual editorial team to cut in 3D. So there had been 3D movies before us, but we had our Avid set up so that we could just, our editor, his name was Niven. Niven was an animal and he would work for hours with his 3D glasses on, but I couldn't do that. So I would always opt for the 2D version, but we were the first team that like literally cut in 3D, and we had a cute little article in the Editors Guild about us. But yeah, it was and that was the last Resident Evil I worked on. And then Niven went on to do Resident Evil 5. I went to Russia to do a movie called The Darkest Hour, where I met like my DP, my visual effects team. I met a whole bunch of crew because they sent 40 Americans over there, and we all stayed in a hotel together. We became great friends, and that's how those relationships is how I got my first short film off the ground.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. So as we move on in the process, we're working on it. You have to submit essentially the first draft of your script for Harvest to Tongle. Is Tongle the one who's kind of, I don't want to use the word control, but are they the ones sort of in charge, or is Fox as present on this journey as Tongle is?
Well, so Tongle was coordinating with Fox, so
Okay.
we were dealing very much with Tongle. And like I said, Quaid was great, and he was very good at like getting information out, getting it out quickly, and letting us know if there were delays or anything like that. So it was like we felt taken care of. It was just very, very organized, which thank God it was, because it was a pretty quick schedule, I think, for such a big IP.
Oh yeah, totally. I remember looking sort of at what the timeline was, and I was like, holy shit, this is quick. I mean, for some people they might think, oh, it's 6 minutes, but with the type of films that you guys were making, they look very authentically in universe. They look like they were shot by, certainly yours looked like it was shot by Ridley Scott. I mean, to have that type of production value in that short of time. Oftentimes people work on short films for a year,
Yes.
It's a long process. So to do what you guys did in that span of time is pretty amazing. And it's also amazing that they're so good. Not that I would think that I would expect them not to be good, but it's because of the turnaround. It's a surprise, I think. I don't know if it was a surprise to you.
Well, listen, the Alien franchise opened up a lot of doors, and a lot of people wanted to work on it. And when it was clear that this was a 20th Century Fox approved and produced and financed Alien project versus like a fan film, like this is all part of the Alien canon now. And so that opens up a lot of favors, and a lot of people want to work on it. And it's an incredible franchise with like such a rich history.
Totally. So here's a sort of a random question. Was there anything for you that was daunting, aside from the logistics of it and the turnaround and some things that we were discussing? What was your most challenging aspect of working on this?
Each step of the way had hurdles, but I wouldn't say anything was daunting. The scariest part of it all was when we accidentally broke the xenomorph costume.
Yeah.
And we had to reshape our second day, which was our last day, based on the safety of Alex Ward to get in the costume. And the thing stunk so bad of spray paint and glue that even just being in the room with it, without Alex having it on his head, was like problematic. So, trying to make our day, and that being our last day, that was probably the most daunting. But Alyssa Morgan, who's like I've used her every single time that I could. She's been unavailable for projects, but she's my go-to person for makeup and hair, and she's also happens to be like this incredible makeup artist for prosthetics and gore and creatures. And so she was able to she grabbed it and disappeared, and we just kept working, and she'd stick her head in with updates. She's like, and I went back and I was like, oh my God, at one point, about an hour later, I went back to the back room, and it looked perfect. And we were just in a waiting period for it to dry. Like it was, thank God for Alyssa.
Yeah.
Alyssa did so much for this production. She introduced me to Jessica Clarke, who played Hannah. She introduced me to Agnes Albright, who plays the synthetic. Her name is Mari. She introduced me to David Tabbert, who did all the costumes. I thought he did a great job. He made the patches. He chose the olive color. He flew out from New York to do this. She helped with hair and makeup, extra people on there. And then, she did like the burn on Alex's face. She did the, all that scarring after he was cut. I'm trying to think. I mean, she was, and then she kind of acted as our alien expert because, so I hadn't seen the alien films like Aliens and Alien 3 and the Winona Ryder one. And I'd seen Covenant.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd seen Covenant and Prometheus recently, but I hadn't seen 2, 3, 4, I guess technically. But I only wanted to watch Alien because I didn't want to get the others in my head because we were very specifically doing something from that world. And I didn't, they were very specific, no military, no guns. So I was like staying away from aliens altogether. But Alyssa was probably similar to you. She was like our alien expert. And so we would hit her up for questions of, is this authentic? Has this ever happened? Would this work? So she was absolutely integral in that production. And thank God she was available, is all I have to say.
I can imagine. I don't know, again, as we were talking sort of off the record or apart from this conversation we're having now, really just the work that goes into these films, not just the film that you did, but just films in general, in terms of the people behind the camera who are working tirelessly to get what we're seeing on film, maybe for a split second, maybe for 5 minutes. And it's incredible amount of work. The behind the scenes journey in film has always been very exciting to me. I mean, I've of course been a film lover all of my life, but I remember even as a kid, like I would see an hour-long documentary about Star Wars, and I just would be like, "Oh my God, I can't do anything else." Like it would excite me more than the film itself, in a way, because it's really the magic making process. And
right,
really
the process of filmmaking is amazing. Like the amount of people. I mean, I go to a couple websites every day just to see, because they're I guess they're curators of things, and they've got similar taste to me. And so I saw this whole thing about the sound of Star Wars, and so it was like an hour of this guy talking about the sound designer for Star Wars.
Yeah,
talking
Ben,
about
what's his name?
Yes.
Ben. I can't remember his last name.
I
right
should
now.
pull the video up, but it was like I just was like, oh my God, just talking about, and I kind of knew about how the lightsaber came about, but like just Darth Vader and how it started and how it ended up. It's just like, it's fascinating to me, just the process of it all.
Totally. I'm as a big movie fan, I know that same sound designer from Star Wars created a sound for Star Wars that they never used, but it ended up being the sound of Deckard's apartment in the first Blade Runner film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ben Burt.
Ben Burt. Yes. He's a wizard as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's been able to create, and also in terms of editing, and certainly I would imagine editing your film, editing Harvest. Yes, there's the visual component, which is 85% of what you're doing, but you're also building an audio world as well, and that can be really fun. And because you're layering things, you're trying to create a soundscape that brings people in, as well as the visuals, so they kind of have to work together. It's a very interesting process.
Right. Well, listen, the editor on this was a guy named Jake Shaver, who I've worked with before. We did the Mila Jovovich video together, which was mainly music, but it had some incredible sound. I should send it to you. It had some incredible sound moments in it. But Jake we kind of had it assembled in like a place so that we could just hand it off to him. Craig did an early assembly, who wrote it, and then we passed it off to Jake to just take it all the way home. And it was, he's, I just gotta say, like, our rough cuts were incredible.
Wow, that's great.
Like, I was just they were so much fun to listen to and so much fun to watch. And I think we had 3 cuts. There was our director's cut, the studio cut 1 and studio cut 2. And I think the long version of studio cut 1, I really, really liked. But it was just too long for for a short film and for a YouTube or IGN type audience.
What was the maximum length that you could go?
Well, I think we were supposed to be like 8 to 10 minutes. I don't remember what the brief said, but at one point, Quaid was saying that we could go over or that we could go under. Like, it became very kind of like they just wanted something good. I don't think there was a maximum. I think they based our maximum length on what felt right. And definitely for mine, there was a lot of the last pass. There was a lot of work done to like really, really make it fun and interesting versus like trying to stretch it out and say, well, I've got a 12-minute short film. It was more like, this thing's got to be fun and it's got to be a ride. And we got to get to that first death as quickly as possible. Because that was like the money. To me, that was like, it was just a lot of fun. Like that whole scene, I'm jumping ahead now talking about the short, and I assume this is all spoilers, which is fine.
Well, technically, which I can just say, this is released the same day of your film, so
okay.
We hope everyone listening has seen it.
Well, in the original draft of the script, Sturgis, who's the guy who grabs the sensor from Mari, is kind of a dick and then goes off and then gets killed by the xenomorph. In the original draft of the script, he goes around the corner and then we just hear a scream and we see a little bit of a shadow and that's it. And so I actually was concerned that we were going to have a 4-minute short film. And at one point I even asked Quaid, I was like, I think we're looking at a 4 to 6 minute short film here. He's like, well, as long as it's good. So it's kind of funny. But once we got the xenomorph costume, I was like, oh my God, we need to use this thing more. And so I think we saw the costume a week before we were shooting. Noah, who directed Alien Alone, picked it up from Quaid. And then since we were using it first, I picked it up from him. And I was just like, oh my God, this thing is awesome. And then Alyssa also found, my makeup artist, Alyssa also found the guy who was inside of the xenomorph costume, a guy who's 6'4" and 150 pounds. His name's Alex. And so once I saw what it looked like on him and what the thing looked like, I was like, all right, we got to shoot this. And so we redid our day and redid that scene, and Sturgis coming around and being alone in that room with the hanging wires that was red with the backlighting was all last minute written.
Wow.
Because we're like, we got to shoot this thing and everyone's going to want to see this thing. I mean, look, I get that there's there's the right amount to show and there's the right amount to hide, but everyone knows what it looks like and everyone wants to see it. So it was all about getting the balance of really letting them get a good look at it, but not having it on there too much. Because there were definitely times in the earlier edits where there was a concern that it might look like a guy in a rubber suit. And so there was a lot of care taken to how that was cut. And Jake did some very specific things in the edit to hide that, like very strategic split screens, very strategic strobing, keeping things really dark. So that you felt like it was there a lot, but you weren't really seeing it clearly. And it was in and amongst a lot of chaos.
So I have a favorite moment of your film. Before I say what it is, you might even know what it is, I don't know. But I'm curious if you have a favorite moment, whether it's a character beat or creature moment.
I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that I like. There's a lot of still pictures that I'm working with just for like Instagram, social media, and my website.
Uh-huh.
And I obviously love the profile shot of Sturgis staring down the xenomorph as it's opening its mouth and its inner jaws coming towards him. I love his death. I love when Mari looks around the corner. Like she peeks around a corner very much. It's a very familiar horror thing of like looking around a corner and you just see this head peeking around. I mean, it's funny because every time, you're driving or you're walking and you see people fighting or you see a car accident, you always crane your neck and watch.
Yeah.
And so I love hearing people scream. And both Jessica and Adam, I mean, I'm shocked that they didn't lose their voices those days because Adam was screaming his head off and Jessica was screaming her head off. It was amazing. And it's just like, you just want to see that. You want to see this terror that's happening so And I don't know. I mean, I really like I don't know. There's a lot that I like about it. If I had to pick a favorite one,
Yeah.
I mean, the one that I worked on the longest was the jump scare with Alec. The jump scare when they come around the corner, Sturgis is already dead, and the xenomorph grabs Alec, who's the guy with the beard, and pulls him out with the sensor. So it's like a throwback to the original with the sensor, and then it's the xenomorph coming out of nowhere and grabbing him. So that's probably my favorite right there.
My favorite moment, I'm trying to, it's funny, as you were talking, I was also trying to go through and just go beat for beat, because I saw them all and I was like, okay, how do I return this? But my favorite moment is when the wife or the girlfriend or whatever she is, obviously she's pregnant, things are kind of in peril, and she kind of drops everything to go and grab the gun. Or not the gun, but the
axe.
Yeah, the axe.
The axe and the sensor.
And I just thought when that happened, I just was like, hell yeah! Like, it just was completely unexpected, and it was certainly a nice tip of the hat to Ripley. But I also feel like it was this. There's this quality about women that I really feel like Ripley embodies, and embodied in her character, that when push comes to shove, women are not to be messed with. And it was just this really surprise moment for me where, again, in films, of course, Alien kind of led the way in terms of female action hero, what Ripley became at the end of Alien. And then you have, of course, the other films. But just becoming the hero that they already were. And they have a source of strength in them. And I don't want to like wax too poetic about it. Because I know it was kind of, everything was tense and it was moving quickly, but I just really felt like it was the right thing for her to do. And she's also sort of in that protective mode. She's protecting her own child. And I thought it was a really brilliant moment.
Jessica was awesome. And it's funny because when we were doing costume fittings, she had taken off her sweater, and she has these gorgeous arms. And I was like, at that point I was like, oh man, let's wrap this around her. We tried everything we could to show her arms because she has these gorgeous arms, but it's just the pregnancy belly, no matter what you did against cotton, didn't work. You could tell. And we're like, damn, so we got to zip her up and keep her covered, because she just Jessica's a gorgeous woman, has these great arms. And I thought, and even in our pictures of that day, I was like, I just wish we could have seen her arms, because they're like these great feminine yet strong arms. But yeah, no, we didn't get to use it. But yes, that was a great, and we had at one point a much longer beat there. We had tried, because Jake is so good with sound design, we had tried this moment where we hang on the belly and we bring the whole world down to the sound of the womb. So we get inside of that character's name is Hannah. So we get inside of Hannah's head and we hear the womb and we hear her motivation, and we see her face. She makes the decision to go, and then she just bolts. But the problem is that when you hang on a belly like that in an Alien film, people think something's going to happen.
Yes.
And so it was like, I was like, damn. I was like, so it's like, we got to take all these shortcuts because people understand Alien, but then because people understand Alien, we couldn't do this one character beat. Because, I was trying to do something that, I was trying to do a throwback to Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, but it didn't work because it was just not it was just the wrong franchise to do that kind of beat in. So we scrubbed it and just made sure that it was very clear that she made this decision to go while the tension was building between the other two characters.
Well, it was well played. I mean, maybe you wanted to do it differently, but I felt like it really played itself out really well. And just, again, it just spoke to her character. And again, a great nod to not just Ripley, but women in roles like that, women who sort of take charge. And I think this is certainly the time and the place where those characters are sort of coming front and central again. So I really appreciated it.
I've always gravitated towards those type of movies anyway. I love how badass Mila Jovovich is. I love the action stars that Angelina Jolie played. I mean, one of my favorite films a couple years ago was Atomic Blonde, because it was shot like an art house film, but it was like Charlize Theron doing these incredible choreographed fight scenes. And so I've always kind of been, and then the streaming series I did and the short film that I did over at IGN/Fox was a female lead. And so I've just always kind of gravitated towards very strong female roles in films.
Yeah. And, Ripley, the character of Ripley really set the precedent. I mean, I could probably suggest that maybe Carrie Fisher's Leia was really the only female character in space, but of course they're vastly different universes. One, I mean, they're both in science fiction. One's arguably fantasy, but one is like very serious, hard R, horror, tension.
Right.
But I just and her character came about in a very specific time in film history and in social history as well. And I just, you can't. I grew up with that. I mean, I had posters of Ripley growing up on my, like, above my bed. I mean, I wouldn't say I worshipped her, but she really like, she's someone who got me through my youth in the best of ways. So I love that Fox and certainly the Alien series itself has kept that legacy going. The films might not all be even. You might like another one more than, the sequels or the prequels or whatever, but they're wholly original and really they take up a space in I would say film history, but I don't know, probably even more than that in terms of what those characters were doing for the visibility of women at the time and now, for sure.
Right, absolutely.
Well, I don't want to keep you on for much longer. I really appreciate it. I do have one kind of final technical question, which is how much footage did you not end up using?
I mean, we shot a single camera. We shot an Alexa Mini. Our DP was Chris Saul, who's just amazing. He owns his own camera, has his own anamorphic lenses, and we shot everything on an easy rig so that we could move quickly, because it was very clear that we're going to need to get coverage very quickly. And so I used the technique of we just essentially had one lens on for a lot. Like the first pass around, we had a 35 on, and then we came around the corner and we had a 75 on. And we just kept moving the camera. We moved back for wides, we moved in for close-ups, and we didn't reslate. We didn't do setups. There were 7-minute takes that I know that drove Jake crazy. But when you're shooting that fast, you just have to go. And I mean, we didn't cut any scenes. And I mean, I don't know how long. I mean, we probably shot a couple hours worth of footage. I mean, not a lot. I mean, we did, I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't feel like I overshot. I've definitely felt like I undershot. There's always more that I wish we had. But probably, an hour, probably 2-3 hours worth of footage, I guess.
Wow. That's a lot, which, that makes sense.
And there were a lot of times also when I was sitting at the monitor and I would just yell to Chris or the first AC just to turn on the camera, because it's such a photogenic set that we were on, and we had great lights and we had tons of atmosphere in there. And, people were walking by, and there was a lot of times when I was like, Chris, just go ahead. And he would walk the hallways after it was lit or before it was lit. And, just get all these great details that, were all over the piece. So there was a lot of just Chris wandering these corridors. A lot of us shooting feet and through things. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I could email you back and measure it at some point. I don't know if I have the project still, but yeah, I mean, we didn't shoot a lot. I mean, I wish we could have shot more, but we only had 2 days to shoot it.
one thing I did want to mention, which I can't believe I didn't mention earlier, which was one of the things that I loved about your film right away, was certainly the cinematography, but the set design, the way the lights were integral into the walls of the set, which again, right away, I was like, well, the guy that I was sitting next to, a friend of mine named Bryant, I was like, this looks like, I told him right away, I was like, this looks like Ridley Scott shot this film. Like the light was coming through everything. It was just beautiful. And I'm curious how that came about, how that design happened, because oftentimes, as you very well know, when people go to light a film, whatever film that might be, they have these exterior lights and they're lighting a film. Ridley Scott is known throughout his career for lighting his films or having a DP light the sets naturally. So all the light they're using is coming from the sets. They're not external lights. Not that they didn't utilize external lights, but oftentimes those lights were built into the walls of the set, the floor of the set, or the ceiling. And I'm curious how that happened with you.
There are these long bulbs that look like fluorescent bulbs. You control them with a Samsung iPad type thing. And you can set color temperature, you can set strobes, you can create, literally you pick from a color wheel and that it sets that color. And they're very diverse. They stay charged for a long time and you can fit them anywhere. And I had done a lot of research on it. We shot at a place called Laurel Canyon Stages. And I mean, everything is shot there. Like there was an episode of Firefly that was there. There's, their list of things that have been shot there is very long, and everybody shoots it differently. And even Noah, who shot, Noah, who shot Alien Alone there. Like again, he lit it completely differently than us, and it looked like a different set. But these bulbs allow you to move very quickly and put them anywhere. And most people who are in that stage light from above, and we're like, well, we don't want to do that because we don't want to look like anything else. So we lit from below. And so that's where essentially all the lights that we had were underneath the walkway. And they were also these big lights on the side that were pushing through. A lot of times when we were like, characters were backlit, there was just a very large light that was pushing through a lot of pieces of the ship, and also moving back and forth to create a lot of movement. Like the ship was actually, working and doing something. And then we would almost always walk, any of those walking scenes when we were close to somebody, we had one of those bulbs, in the hand of an AC or a grip to make sure that, the faces were lit. So it was just it was kind of out of necessity, and it was also just kind of out of mood. We wanted to do something different, and we wanted it to be moody, and we wanted it to be dark, and we wanted the ship to look like it was dying. So that's kind of why we chose that way. And I remember the moment we finished the pre-light, I was just like, we looked through the monitor and we're like, this is it. It was just amazing.
Oh yeah, that was it. All right. It was, it was again, I, as an artist myself in many different forms, I really my love for the Nostromo and that look is just, it's something that you just don't see, but really, truly, I don't, I'm really being honest here. I really thought it was beautiful. It was grand. It's the kind of set that, in terms of sci-fi, that I just love. So great job on that.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's really all that I have. If anyone has not seen Alien Harvest, it is out today. I really recommend that you do. It's my top favorite, and then I have a couple other, but they're all really amazing films. Again, with the time that you guys had and just the constraints, and then the personal lives that you guys all lead that you were able to create, and then you are a father and, a husband and all of those things going on, and you have day jobs and, jobs that you do. Just bravo to you guys for this. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. For more on Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, please visit perfectorganism.com. Perfect Organism is available for listen or download through Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and Spotify. If you'd like to support the show, please visit perfectorganism.com/support. Thank you.